folks, my name is Nick, this is Board Game Brawl, and it is time once again for another segment in my Top 100 Games 2015 edition. Today we are going over number 50 through number 41, which means we are finally in the top 50. These are the 50 games I love the most right now at this point in time, together with dissenting opinions from the peanut gallery at BoardGameGeek.com. So, without further ado, let's just jump into it. Any quick notes I need to mention here? Nope, I think we're good to go. My number 50 is Star Wars Imperial Assault from Fantasy Flight Games. It's brand new to the list this year because I think it came out just a couple of weeks after I got done doing my top 100 list last year in December, and since then it has sold like hotcakes, and then sold more, and more, and more, and more, and more. Tiny expansion packs, tons of those are out. One big box expansion with another one on the way. It's safe to say this game has been a huge hit for Fantasy Flight. It essentially takes the exact same system as Descent, Journeys in the Dark 2nd Edition, which is a fantasy version of this, also by Fantasy Flight, and puts it in the Star Wars universe. One player is the Overlord, or whatever the equivalent is called for Star Wars, who is controlling all of the Empire's forces, the stormtroopers and such. The other players each take control of a different rebel character, working together cooperatively to go through different scenarios and try to secure shipment and cargo or stop some evil plan from the Empire. That has tons of high-quality plastic miniatures. They look amazing. Lots of different tiles and different board setups, a whole scenario booklet, all these different ally packs and villain packs you can buy to enhance the game, only a few of which I've actually delved into, but I did try the expansion Twin Shadows, which is great, despite the fact that it has Boba Fett on the box and there's no actual Boba Fett miniature in the box, which is a bit weird. Now, there's a two-player skirmish mode that you can play with this game, with all the pieces out of the box, which is just like a tactical miniatures game you play head-to-head. I tried that, and I know early on when I got the game, and I know that a lot of people love it, it wasn't quite for me. But even as just its campaign one versus all mode, I think it's amazing. And by the way, I'm not even a huge Star Wars fan. There's the other older sibling of this game, may or may not be higher on my list, but even so, I still like the fact that they refined the systems of this game based on their previous efforts. So that is Star Wars Imperial Assault, my number 50. Hellside, number 3, Hellside 3, has a different opinion. He says, I would give this game a 0 out of 10 if I could. It's the worst game I've played. I would not spend a dime in this game. In this game. They don't use dimes in the Star Wars universe. My number 49 is the Pathfinder adventure card game from Paizo. This is actually down 23 spots from number 26 last year. That's a pretty sizable drop, and I think that the reason for that is that I've come to the conclusion that my group is not going to play this game with me. I have played it solo, however, and I actually have a lot of fun with the game solo, but it's just not going to work with the group, which puts it in an odd place in my collection, despite the fact that two big expansions came out, I think, since the time I put out my list last year. Two big expansions have come out for it, Wrath of the Righteous and Skull and Shackles. Another thing about those, and I don't want to make this into a critical thing, but they don't really change the formula of the game that much from the base set, Rise or Wrath of the Rune Lords or whatever it is. But still, it really is an amazing game. It's all about taking control of these different Pathfinder characters from the role-playing game universe, and it's essentially a tiny bit of deck building. You have a deck representing your character, and you go through different locations and scenarios looking for bad guys, working cooperatively together in order to find them, root them out, destroy them, go through monsters, go through obstacles. You handle this through some typical role-playing game dice rolls with different types of dice. But the whole crux of the game is that not only is your deck your life, but you also can enhance your deck during the course of the game. Find new allies, find magical items, sort of sift through your deck in between missions and refine it and make it better as you go on. It's definitely an incredibly unique experience. It still hasn't been fully replicated, although a few other games have tried, most notably and most recently, the Warhammer Quest adventure card game. They went ahead and pilfered the name right then and there. So I think it has fallen a bit out of favor only because it's mainly a solo game for me at this point, but it's still a great solo game, and I have a lot of fun with it. That is the Pathfinder adventure card game, down 23 spots from number 26 from Paizo. Hitomi Kojiro, however, says, if you want a game with no decisions, no story, and minimal player interaction, then this is the game for you. Put your character in front of a deck of cards, turn the top one over, and roll a die, rinse, and repeat. My number 48 is up almost as many spots as Pathfinder Adventure Card Game fell down, and that is Concept, which moved up 22 spots from number 70. Now, this is one of the highest ranked party games on my list, and I like party games quite a bit, but some of them can feel kind of samey if they're just like trivia games, and not every party game is for every person, depending on the amount of interaction involved and how much lying and bluffing you need to do. What's great about Concept, and I have heard people say that this is more of an activity than a game, and even I've probably said that to a degree, but that's part of what its charm is, because you sort of decide, you and the group decide how much you want to get involved with the game. Essentially what it is the board consists of just a bunch of different generic icons, things that are sort of vaguely represent other symbols and ideas, or concepts, if you will. Or it might have like a picture of some sort of dignitary, which could mean to you president or governor or duke or whatever it might be. And there might be a picture of water, where water could be anything. It could be ice, it could just be the ocean, it could be the sea. You know, there's all of these different things that are trying to get across a broader concept. And you'll have a deck of cards that are just words and phrases or specific ideas, or it could be names of movies or whatever it might be with different difficulty levels. And you need to get the other players at the table, whether you're playing solo or in teams, and try to get them to guess your concepts just with no verbal communication, only putting out little cubes and question marks and exclamation points to try to link together all these different ideas and icons on the map to form your concept. You don't even know at the start of the game, you have to decide what even the cubes mean. If I put cubes here, does that mean that's part of the concept? If I put an exclamation point here, does that mean it's a main idea? You have to decide that with the group. And it's so simple, and it's so fun, and it's so light. No group that I've played this with has not had a great time with it, just getting into it. It's so fun to try to get people to guess. It's fun to be the guesser. It's like this nice level of tension to try to get all this stuff done. You can play for points, you can ignore points, who cares? Either way, even though it does sort of skirt the boundaries of a game, it's still a game, and it's still great. That is Concept from Asmodee and Repos, I believe. My number 48, up 22 spots from number 70. Michelle says, terrible game. Avoid it. Puzzling to put down the cubes, discussions in the process, and then it's just a guessing game. If I would have played this genre again, I'd rather play Dixit, which is much smoother. My number 47 is brand new to the list, and that is The Voyages of Marco Polo. I don't have too many heavy Euro games on my list, and I wouldn't necessarily say this is really heavy. I'd put this maybe mid-weight. But The Voyages of Marco Polo is just a great idea, great concept. Oh, look, callback. And it just works together very well. You are representing one of these different famous traders from trade from history, who are trying to make this route through Asia, through India, and you have to buy, sell, and trade different goods. You have to use camels in order to travel around this map. And when you get to different map locations, you set up trading posts, you get different special abilities and capabilities, and you meet certain types of achievements that get you more income and resources. Every player has a different special power, which completely breaks the game. This is a very interesting game in that regard. There's lots of games that have different player powers, but they're usually something a little bit minor, like, oh, you get an extra coin if you do this. Whereas in this one, which by the way is a dice rolling worker placement game, so your dice are your workers that you put out on the board, as well as having actual workers that move around a map, little meeples and things. But with the special powers, they're just completely unbalanced. Like, one of them is just like, you get to decide what dice you roll, or one of them is like, you get extra resources every time someone goes to a certain spot on the board. Really powerful things, but you all have special powerful abilities, which makes it feel really cool. It makes you feel like you are definitely accomplishing something the other players are not. You feel different and distinct, and there's just tons of stuff going on in the game, but it never feels too overwhelming. It also plays very quickly. I was really surprised by that as well. So all of these things put together, even though the theme is kind of like most Euro games, means that it really is my type of Euro game. That is The Voyages of Marco Polo from Z-Man Games, my number 47. Galgor does not approve, however, and says, perhaps this game is not that bad. But after people presented this game to me as best game ever, I was really disappointed. See, don't ever do that. Just say, here's a game, let's play. Well, kids, it's all fun and games until Nick mentions the DC Comics deck building game, my number 46, up 12 spots from number 58 last year. And really, as I've said on the deck building top 10 list that I've done, this could be any of the Cerberus game engine games from Cryptozoic. Well, not any of them. I haven't played like The Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit, but I played the Naruto one, the Street Fighter one, and they're actually excellent. In fact, I would say that the Naruto deck building game, despite me not liking the theme that much, I love anime, I don't like Naruto, but that actually has the best mechanisms of any of these games. But I picked the DC Comics deck building game as the winner out of all of this because it has the most expansions. There's the most content, the most different types of card sets I can mix together. There's a cooperative set that's awful, like really awful, the cooperative mode, but you still might want the cards from those sets. So there's tons of expansions and content available, and I don't know what else to say about it. It's just, I love deck building, and there certainly are better deck builders. We will talk about those soon. But the DC Comics deck building game is really easy to learn, really easy to teach. It plays fast. It's very straightforward. The theme is not there. Everybody knows this at this point. Punches buying kicks, and then kicks buying the Batmobile. None of that makes any kind of thematic sense, but nevertheless, you are looking at really high-quality art of DC Comics heroes, or whatever the set might happen to be, and some things really are maybe not the most thematic things, but at least you have characters that have actions that make some sort of sense, and you, Batman being all about equipment, things like that. Okay, tenuous at best, but the point of the game is simply putting together incredibly powerful combos. I've seen more people who are used to be into Magic or are still into Magic who also play the DC Comics deck building game because it gives them that feel of getting these really powerful cards out quickly, and I really enjoy it, and I feel like it's not completely random. I feel like you can still be very, very good at this game and know the best things to buy and trounce other players who are new to the game, but then they quickly get their feet under them as well. So it's been very successful in my group, and I just have a big soft spot for it, obviously, because it is my number 46. The DC Comics deck building game, in my opinion, the best of the Cerberus deck builders because of the amount of content that's out for it. PFCT is QR77059FZ95101501 says that one of the worst examples of a disconnect between theme and mechanics I have ever seen, and this is coming from a fan of Stefan Feld. My number 45 is also brand new to the list, and I just got a bunch of small expansions for it that I'm really eager to try, actually. And that is Xenoshyft Onslaught from Cool Mini or Not. This was their first foray, or the first noted foray, into non-miniatures gaming. And since then, they've done quite a few games like that, although even games like World of Smog on Her Majesty's Service still have miniatures involved somehow. This is a straight-up deck-building game that maybe you might have a first-player pawn that's a miniature, but other than that, that's it. It's just a bunch of cards and some boards. But man, is it a well-done cards with some boards game. This is essentially Starship Troopers, the game. You and the other players are working cooperatively together to, you're like miners or something in the future, and security guards protecting those miners who are trying to loot this planet of its precious ores, like chrysanthemum. That's a flower, but okay. Pretend that you're actually getting chrysanthemums, and it's actually a little bit funnier. But you're trying to get this different ore that you actually use to purchase more units and purchase gear for those units, and then you have to use those in deck building fashion, but with some twists. Like, for instance, cards go, I think this is the type of game where I'm blanking out, but I think you put them directly into your hands, but then you can also give them to other players, like directly play cards into another player's field, and that's a good thing because also this is a tower defense game, and every player is a tower, and you have aliens coming at you not one by one, but in hordes every round in different waves, and you need to fend them off with the soldiers that you purchased, equipping them with the gear that you purchased, and if any of them get through, they damage your communal base, and then if it runs out of hit points, you all die. It's amazingly tense and tough, and the artwork is both beautiful and gory and just terrifying, and the monsters that you're facing, it's really incredible. And the fact that it has, like, it's purely cooperative, meaning that you have to always be working with each other. No one can alpha dog it. No one can just say, well, I'm just going to do what I do here and I'll win the game for us. No, you need help. Every now and then you need one of your other players to throw a grenade in your lane, or else you are going to bomb the game for everybody. So I really appreciate that aspect of it, and I love the theme. That is Xenoshyft Onslaught, my number 45. White Ice with a 1 says, this game is terrible. This isn't even a game. I need to have, by the way, a bell that rings every time that I read a negative comment that accuses the game of not being a game, but this game is terrible. This isn't even a game. You make little to no decisions based off of information you have no clue about. It takes way too long with 4 players and is extremely boring. My number 44 is in my opinion, more interesting version of a game that has better mechanisms. I will admit that. And that was mentioned just a few minutes ago. This is Descent: Journeys in the Dark 2nd Edition, which is actually down 19 spots from number 25. But this is actually the whole system that Star Wars Imperial Assault is based on. And I will admit that Imperial Assault has some better ideas with some of their mechanisms, but I still like the fantasy theme better. And again, there's a lot more content and just interesting characters and things. It makes me feel more like I'm playing D&D, and I don't quite get that feeling from Star Wars Imperial Assault. So I will definitely admit that this is more of a theme and feeling trumping cold mechanisms, but still it works for me better. And I think the reason that it fell down is only because it is so hard for me to play campaign style games nowadays. It's more like with Descent, I did that for quite a while, and then I couldn't get the same people together, and then I was just like, well, every now and then we'll bust it out and try to play it, and it's hard to really start up another campaign. But despite that, I still think it's an amazing game. This is, like I said, essentially D&D in a box. You take control of a bunch of fantasy characters who are working together against an overlord through different scenarios. In between missions, you can go to shops, you can equip yourself, get better, you level up in a way. But even the Overlord gets stronger from campaign to campaign and can outfit him or herself better with different trap cards and magical spell cards and curses and things like that. So it's purely competitive. And I mean, some of the players are working together, but that Overlord is out to kill you, which, to be honest, a lot of D&D games are, even if the DM doesn't want to admit it. So this cuts right to the quick and gets rid of all of that nonsense and just says, I'm the Overlord, and I'm trying to kill you. What are you going to do about it? So, very, very interesting concept, and I haven't seen a better... I might be eating my words in a minute. I can't remember everything that's above this, but I don't think there's a better dungeon crawler out there, despite its age, and despite the fact that it's gone through a couple of different editions. Yes, by the way, 2nd edition is all there is. Don't even bother to go back with the 1st edition stuff unless you want more miniatures and things like that. Descent: Journeys in the Dark 2nd Edition from Fantasy Flight Games, down 19 spots from number 25 to number 44. But David Jonas says, the first and only game we as a group have ever decided to dispose of soon after purchasing. We played several games and didn't once come away thinking, that was good. My number 43 is Summoner Wars from Plaid Hat Games and designer Colby Dowk. That is up 8 spots from number 51. And that's, I think, because it was more fresh in my mind. There's a huge standalone expansion called Summoner Wars Alliances that came out earlier this year that had, I think it was like February or something like that, that had all of the original factions from the Summoner Wars game, but combined. So like there's, I think, 16 factions, and now they're combined into 8 factions. So you had some... all the different combinations off the top of my head, but there's like the Mountain Vargoth with the Vanguard mixed together into the same deck. So all these different complementary races and factions mixed together to give you a brand new play experience, which I thought was a really interesting idea. But even despite that, Summoner Wars is a great game. It is a card game that is simulating essentially a tactical miniatures game. You move cards around a grid, 2-player head-to-head. You can play it 4-player in teams. I wouldn't necessarily recommend that. But you play a 2-player head-to-head, you're moving around all of your different units, you have a summoner that you need to protect who is uber powerful, but if you lose him, you lose the game. And it's all about moving your characters around in tactical ways, just like you would with a miniatures game like Warhammer. But you also have your deck of cards, which represents your magic, and you have to decide, do I want to use my cards as units? Do I have the capability to do that? Because I still need my magic points, which are my cards, and also the defeated units that I take from my opponent. I need those as magic, and so it's all about hand management and resource management. So it's heavier than a lot of other 2-player games. It's not necessarily the fastest 2-player game that's in my collection, but it is one of the most interesting and one of the ones where I'm like, okay, I love that faction, but I want to try something else. Okay, I hate that faction, now I want to try something else. There's so many different factions in the game that you'll find one that you like for sure, and it's just fun to experiment with all of them. That is Summoner Wars, my number 43, up 8 spots from number 51. Garcia 1000, however, says, the strongest strategy is not kidding at all, killing your own units. He does not approve. My number 42 is a game that I felt never got as much love as it deserved, although that is slowly changing as the years go on. That is Darkest Night from Victory Point Games. It's actually down 11 spots from number 31. I wouldn't put too much stock in that. Some of these games are just going to fall just because other things have moved up higher than them, not because they are falling out of favor with me. I still love Darkest Night. There's been actually at least 2 expansions that have come out since I did my list last year, and a lot of different promo characters and things like that. And that's what's great about the game, is it's very, very expandable. It's essentially, as it's been compared many times, a fantasy version of Pandemic, in the sense that you have all these different fantasy characters working together. It's a pure cooperative game against a dark necromancer who is going around the map dropping off these like curses, either like really bad enemies like zombies and vampires, or it's just evil spells like dark mist and things like that, and like bad curses. But you and the other players have to try to quell those curses before they get too bad and outbreak into even worse things. And also at the same time, you have to avoid the necromancer until you can find holy relics that are powerful enough to kill him once and for all. And each of the different expansions adds some sort of new gameplay elements. You might go on quests or might amp the difficulty up a bit. There's a ton of new characters you can play as with each of the expansions. So at this point, there's a lot of content. And I always love this game much, much better than just plain old vanilla Pandemic, or even Pandemic with the expansions, because I just love the theme better. I feel like each character is very distinct. You have a deck of cards representing all of your different special abilities, and you'll start off with some of them. You may be able to gain some of the other ones later, which is way, way better than just the generic, like, I have a character with one single special ability that Pandemic does. So I just love everything about it much, much better than that. Very interesting to me, despite the fact that I still believe it needs a fully big box board game version of itself, rather than one of these like cheapo Victory Point Games type of productions. But nevertheless, it also has excellent artwork, though, I will say that. That is Darkest Night, my number 42. New Killer Star 27, however, disagrees and says, poor man's Arkham Horror. I like the way characters progress, but that's about it. My number 41 is another new game for the list, and the last one that we're going to be talking about today. This one is from Artipia Games, and it is called New Dawn. And this is actually a game set in the same universe as Among the Stars, which is the first game of this series, and now they have Among the Stars Revival. I think they put the new game Lightspeed into the same universe as Among the Stars. It's a reimplementation of an older game from Cheap Ass Games. So they're really building a franchise with this game universe, which has amazing artwork. I've always thought that about every game in this line. And I think that New Dawn at this point is by far, I love Among the Stars. It's a great game. I think it was in my 101 to 110. But New Dawn, I think, blows away any game that Artipia as a whole has put out. This is an area control game, but it's an area control game where you and the other players are building the map as you go with these different cards representing bases on planets. Among the Stars was all about building different space stations, whereas New Dawn is about actually trying to rebuild the universe and the galaxy by colonizing all these planets. And you do that by putting out these different cards representing different bases on these planets. And you have different mobile headquarters that you'll put out, claiming these different areas as your own while using the special abilities of these cards and special abilities of these different ambassadors, or I forget what their proper title is, but like ambassador type people that you're trying to get the favor of. And there is a lot going on in the game, but at its core, it's just about duking it out over this different territory, and I love it. It works so, so well. Every round is exciting. Every round is, what am I going to do? I mean, just you have a lot of options, but it's all about like hand management and just tactically figuring out how to respond to your opponents to keep and maintain control of the most areas as possible. I love it. I would play it right now. I haven't played it in a while, and I wish that I had more time for it because it's just it's so smooth and works so well. That is New Dawn from Artipia Games. Novo Knight, however, quickly got rid of it. And that is the end of today's segment of the list, 5241. Come back for 4231 very, very soon. I want to expedite the release of these videos and wrap it all up. We're getting closer and closer to the top tiers of the list, and it's getting more and more exciting. Thank you so much for watching. Stay tuned. Take care.